Hello, everyone, and welcome to the United Happy Hour podcast. This is Ash, and on today's episode, I'm joined by one of my friends, Bobby. Hey, Bobby, welcome to the show, and we're looking forward to hear your story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'm Bobby. I live in Pennsylvania, in the United States. I am a dad to two, currently in a PhD program full time. I'm also a crazy person who runs every day. So looking forward to talking about all of that with you today.
Yeah, so that's probably off the bat question. You are at 647. That last time you sent it to me, so it's probably 648 now. That's your running streak, and what inspired you to start it, and what keeps you going to it every day? Because that's almost 2 years.
So today's actually day 650. I didn't run yet. I'll be out a little bit later today. So for me, this is my second attempt at a run streak. During the 2020 year, I started my first run streak during the COVID pandemic in the world. So, running was definitely something we were able to do. And so I started that one in March of 2020, and that one I started initially as, oh well, I'll do this run streak thing until I go back to work, but then it became a lot more of like a daily accomplishment, or like some fulfillment, some that time for yourself. And so that original streak lasted 745 days. So I feel like, to use some baseball terms, I'm rounding third and maybe heading home here, and might hit the home run and get past that. And so looking forward to doing that. But for me, the run streak is really important to set apart some of my time each day, being able to do something, one that's good for your mind, your body, your soul. I also, I mentioned I have two kids, so I think it's a really good example for little ones to see, your dedication to doing something that's hard and challenging, but also that it's important to take that time for yourself as well. So I think it really gives like multiple levels of meaning for me.
That's nice and that's beautiful. And I think I understand what you mean by the fulfillment part, because that's what I felt too, and that's what I used to do. I used to run early in the morning as soon as I wake up. Once I got it done, then I'm like, at least I did this. So rest of the day, it doesn't matter what happened in the rest of the day, but at least I got my run done, and I'm off to a great start. So I think I can update to that. And 743, so 90 more days, man, that's tough. I don't know how you do it. Is there a minimum 1 mile, or how much do you do for this trek?
For me, 1 mile is my minimum. And so, as you can appreciate, there are days that it's easy to get in many miles. And, then there are the days where even finding that, I usually run about 8 minutes for a mile. I can run faster, but, a reasonable pace for me is, I always say, is like I should be able to fit 8 minutes into my day. Certainly with kids and schedules and life and work and school, some days it's a little bit of a challenge. But one of the things I've learned from both streaks is, you have to be flexible. I used to be an early runner myself. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I like to run whenever I have the largest chunk of time. So I would say, by and large, though, most of the runs during each of the streaks were closer to 3 or more miles. So I like to try to get a good 20 to 30 minutes if I can.
Like you said, some days it's tough as you do so many things from your PhD and job and kids. It's usually very tough balancing all of this. But have there been days where you almost broke the streak, and on that particular day, how did you push through?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, like, for me, the most helpful and most influential part of me being able to do that is my wife. She's very awesome and gracious, and make sure I'm able to get in, even if it's just a mile. And there were several times where, like it's getting later in the evening, looking at the clock, oh, I didn't get a run in. And she'll say, well, quick, why don't you go now and before bedtime or anything like that. And I've had some times where it was 10:45, 11 o'clock in the evening, where I'm throwing on some shoes and running around the neighborhood. Thankfully, I live in a place where that's a possibility. I'm trying to think if there were specific instances. I know from streak 1 to streak 2, there was a break in the daily activity, and that coincided with the birth of our daughter. I was able to run. My wife had a scheduled cesarean section for delivery, so I ran a little bit, but eventually the cumulative fatigue caught up. So a couple months after she was with us, I pulled the plug on that streak. It took some time where I was exercising, stationary bike and other stuff. Wasn't running every day, and then June 1st, 2023, I restarted this current streak. So, and that's kind of where it is. But I think really trying to be flexible. I'm blessed with a job where I can try to fit in things around work obligations, so that's really helpful for me being able to do that. We traveled earlier this year, and so we did a cruise. It was I'm an outside runner as well. Very, very rarely will I do a treadmill, but the boat that we were on, the ship that we were on, did not have like a running deck or anything. So there was a day where we were at sea, so it was a treadmill day. But just in particular, like with vacation, I try to prioritize the family stuff more. So when we were at destinations, I would maybe get a short run in, but then back to doing the things that we really wanted to do as a family. So really just try to fit it in when we can.
Cruises are nice, but also it's limited, and I can understand. The one we went to had a deck, so I was able to get a run in. It's a different experience though. It's like, oh, we're running in the ocean and the sea is moving, and it's kind of nice. And also the place where they put the treadmill is quite nice too, because you can see the whole blue ocean, and then it's quite nice spot like they have on the cruise. Okay, so you said you are in a PhD program and you are coaching your oldest in multiple sports. How do you fit running in such a packed schedule?
Yeah, really, oftentimes I think it's easy for people to find a reason to not do something versus a reason to do something. So I'm really mindful and intentional on that aspect. And I just try to look ahead and see where in my schedule can I fit in what I need to do. I tend to find it easier to fit in my runs during the work week than the weekends. And I think that's just because I prefer to, again, prioritize like family stuff. On the weekends, if I get up early, and I'll get in a run before we start doing things, that's definitely optimal in that situation. But depending on what sport my son is playing, he plays pretty much a different sport throughout the entire year. And I've often coached, or my wife has coached his team, and so usually that's a couple evenings out of the week where there's a practice, and then there's games intermixed through that as well. And so just trying to see that. There have been a number of times where he's starting baseball now, and I'll run around the field while he's at practice if I'm not coaching. My wife and I sometimes are splitting as coaches or other coaches, and so I can put the little one in the stroller, run around the field, and have that period of time for that. I've taken the run commute approach to it, so I'll run to, if it's based on where it's at, I can run to where some of the games are, and then either get a ride home or run back. So just trying to be creative, I think, is really important. And also, just trying to be mindful of, is there a specific workout you need to do, and what's the period of time available? What does the workout call for? Hopefully it's not necessarily something where it's not a hill workout necessarily, or is it an interval workout or something flexible where you can kind of accommodate to what you have at disposal. So I try to keep that in mind as well.
So has running helped you with focus or stress management while working on a PhD? I'm sure that's really tough, because I cannot imagine doing that. So has running helped a bit?
Absolutely, yeah. Running is really, really important, I think, personally for stress management, mental health. It's just nice to have that period of time where you can focus on, if you want to think about the problems you're working on for the program, or if you just want to decompress, listen to music, or not listen to music at all, just take in nature. There's a lot of different approaches that I could take during a run to try to maximize that. And so I find running to be super helpful for me in being able to manage the different obligations we have as adults in life, and that program as well.
I kind of agree that it is also the same thing for me. It kind of help with my mental health, and if I'm stressed and if I go for a run around the forest or around the trail, then it's kind of nice to just be in that moment and not think about, and just like kind of de-stress or de-escalate the situation and stuff like that. So I can relate to that. Since you say you coach your oldest in multiple sports, has those coaching have influenced in your own training and running mindset?
Absolutely. I think, I learn a lot from the kids that are on the team, as probably hopefully as much as they learn something from me as a coach. And I think one of the most important lessons that you can draw from youth sports is to try to maintain the level of fun. A lot of times I think it's easy as a society to see where people are trying to make it, a lot more pressure packed, and I think that presents some challenges for kids. So fortunately, he's still younger. He's only 10, so I'm not a person who's thinking the Olympics are in the future for any of the kids. And so I try to really make sure that the experience is fun for them, and I think that translates to running too. If you enjoy doing it, you're probably going to do it more versus if it's not feeling good. That's something that maybe we should look at the way you're approaching your running. Are you maybe overly exerting, trying to run too hard, too fast, too early in your process? And so, I think the fun aspect is something that I really have learned to do. But also, the importance of a varied approach to what you're working on. If you're doing the same thing, say, every time I run, I sprint. That's not good necessarily. I wouldn't, from my non-professional experience. But if your goal is to get faster and you never do a speed workout, well, that's probably also not helpful either. So I think, one aspect of any sport is that variation of skills that you need to put together to make yourself most successful. So I think that's another lesson that is super helpful that you draw from sports. But also I think different sports require different aspects, physically. And so just being mindful of that as well. You can draw on lessons from another sport, like how.
Yes, I agree. The level of fun should be there, especially for the kids. For us too. I think at times I have hated running because it's super competitive and we want to run faster. I want to run faster, so I'm more focused on getting the time, and it feels like a job and it's really hard. And I think that was the reason during the Berlin Marathon training I didn't enjoy running that much because I was putting myself under so much pressure, and the fun aspect was gone. So now I just try to enjoy until before I get to that point where I need to push. Like I said, I think the balance needs to be there between everything. It needs to be fun and it needs to be focused on what you're trying to do. That's a great advice that you have given.
People to, like, you see what other people are doing, and so you try to compare yourself to it, and even if that's not necessarily a driver for you, or you set out something, and the pressure totally can really derail, I think, your performance. So it's tricky to set a goal for yourself and then try to attain it but not drive yourself crazy. It's a fine line for sure.
Oh yeah, I think that was one of my problem was to because I really wanted to do sub 4 in the Berlin Marathon, and I trained based on that. I was working hard, but then I got injured because I was pushing way too much than what my body can do at that moment. So, and I think that was one of the biggest lesson for me was to put your time, but don't push yourself so hard that you break. Because you need to be patient, and like Rome was not built in a day, so you need to build and you need to progress slowly over time rather than trying to go from point A to point B in a very fast pace and under very like progressive circumstances which may get you injured. That was one of the lessons for me to be patient, and it will happen because the more you run, the more better you get at it. So and the more faster you get, I think we just need to prioritize and just be open rather than be just super focused and not enjoy the run. I think that kind of takes you sometimes into that path where you don't like running at all. That's what happened to me. And so the next question is based on this. So you said you had a half next month or the next weekend, and you had a goal of 130. That's fast. Yeah. So how have you been training leading to it?
That's a funny question. So I'm not sure how realistic my goal is. I'm not sure if you're a Garmin user or anything, and I know I'm sure the other watches do similar things, but they kind of give you an estimation of like, hey, here's where you're at. We think you'll finish in X amount of time for Y distance. Right now, Garmin is predicting a 1 hour 34-minute finish time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that's far off. I know. I'll say this. I've been I guess a loyal Garmin user since like what looked like calculators on your wrist. So I feel pretty comfortable with it. I know this is kind of in the running some running communities a kind of a divisive topic of the Garmin coach and the Garmin predictor of how accurate it is. So for me, I've found that it's been pretty good in predicting how I typically perform. So I feel comfortable that it's in the ballpark for me. I've routinely come a little bit under the prediction times. So I mean, I'm gonna take that as a something to be hopeful about. However, I'm also realistic about my training. Yes, I've run for the last 649 days. I'll get 50 today. But I haven't been as intense with my running of late. So Garmin has definitely reminded me of my deficiency in my anaerobic approach, and that completely tracks. I typically will follow what the Garmin's suggestion is each day, but you can also pick one of the days in the next week, and if I like that better, I will often pick it. And so a lot of the speed work over the winter hasn't necessarily been done. So I'm not sure that my goal is definitely going to happen. I've told some friends I'm going to swing for the fences, and maybe I'll get a home run, or maybe I'll fly out, but we'll see what happens. My fastest half marathon, I think back in 2021, and it was 1 hour, 30 minutes, 44 seconds. So my goal is to try to put a 2:9 in that second portion of the 1 hour, but I don't know. We'll see. It should be a good course. Looks like the weather's going to be nice. It's down in Washington, D.C. It's the Rock and Roll Half Marathon. The only excuse really is going to be me, I think, at this point, if I don't come up and meet the goal that I set for myself. And if I don't, that's fine. I've not really raced much lately, so it'll just be a really good check of where I'm at in terms of fitness and what do I need to do maybe better if I want to achieve that goal in a future race. I've not done super many great long runs, so it'll be a fun experiment here for me.
I do use Garmin, and also I'm also a user for a long time. I like Garmin. It's easy, and I also like the data that it gives, and I also believe the predictor worked, because prior to Berlin, my prediction was like 3 hours and 51 minutes or something like that. But right now it's over 4 hours, which makes sense. I think you'll swing for it. If it says 1 hour 34, then I think 130 it's gettable. And I do know what you mean by not be able to run like speed work in the winter, because it's hard. Here also it was the same issue, because I was not able to run at all. But during the winter it's very hard to run speed runs, because it's so cold, and your body is more focused on keeping your body warmer rather than like getting those butt plumps on your legs. So it's really, really difficult unless you do a treadmill to achieve any decent speed outside in the snow. So from what I'm hearing, I think you are going to swing it and get a home run. I'm looking forward to see your race result on the weekend. So as we are in this race topic, so what will be the strategy for the race day? And I don't know, which Garmin do you use? It also has like a pre-planned pace on it, so that you can adjust it. So is there any pacing strategy? And also, like, how are you preparing it mentally? Because 130 means you have to go from the right go, right? So because there is no, I'm going to take easy for a couple of miles and then I'm going to hit in, because you have to push from get go. So how will you manage all of that?
Yeah, so really good question. I try, and I'm usually not very successful in having that negative split approach of not burning too much of the gas early in the race. So my goal is to try to start out a little bit on the slower side, not necessarily slow like you said, because not a lot of wiggle room here. I think I need to average 652 per minute mile pace. I'm not sure what that is for the rest of the world, but it's a pretty aggressive pace, for me anyway. I certainly recognize there are much faster people out there, and that would be a pretty easy thing, but I also know that probably sounds crazy to other people. So I would say I'm gonna try to keep it as even paced as possible. So my goal is to stick in that 650 to 7 minute mile pace. I have the Garmin 965 Forerunner 965, I guess. So it does have those abilities to set up some sort of pacing alerts. I've never done that before, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's tricky, because if you are, I have only used it once, right? But because it keeps reminding you that you are either slow or fast, and you have to sit in the green zone, because either if you go too fast, then it will say you are going too fast, and it gets annoying at point, at some time, because you are just trying to run, but then the watch will keep saying that you are too fast and you are too slow, like slow down, and you keep have to look at your watch. So it has pros and cons adding those things in.
I agree. Yeah. And I feel like it might be more of a con for me personally, just how I am for a lot of what you said. I know during when I use the Garmin Coach, I'm notoriously bad for recovery run paces. I never run slow enough for what Garmin says my recovery run is. I'm more of a, when I look at that kind of stuff, I tend to focus more on heart rate. And so my heart rate is, more in that zone 2 area, then I don't really think I need to slow down more. I kind of wonder if I would turn that on for the race, if it would be more of a distraction for a lot of what you said. So I'll probably just be more of a free spirit and keep a passive look at the mile splits. I know what I need to average generally in order to have a chance at it. And so, but I also think that if for some reason something goes super sideways, I'd hate to have that. I know that sound of like you're too slow or you're too fast. I would hate for that to continually be doing for however many miles it is.
Yeah.
So, the doo doo I think is the sound of when you're too slow. So not looking forward to that. So I think I'll probably just keep an eye. I do have it announced each mile split, so I'll listen to that and keep an eye on that, I think.
For the rest of the world, when you run 651 mile per hour, it's like 416. So that's fast. 416 is incredible. That's yeah, that is fast. That 416 is fast. So if you do 651, then you get 129.47. So that goes under what you're trying to get. So yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So you said that you haven't been racing a lot, and this is like one of the races you have done in a long time. So what excites you about getting back into the racing? Like you said earlier, you wanted to just check yourself.
Yeah, I would say I'm generally like a competitive person, just with myself more so now. Like I just like to see where I'm at. I'm trying to think. I think my last race was August of last year. I did a local, just like a super small local 10K at this one park. So it was a nice community event, which ended up turning into a kind of a funny story where I raced it. I raced it well, actually, and I ended up winning the 10K, which I didn't
Wow.
know that I won it, because the funny part of the story was 2 loops around this lake. So yeah, they started the 10K first, and then after a little bit they let the 5K people start. But when I started, this one gentleman took off, and like he was moving, and I saw him for probably like the first loop around. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, second is good. Like I'm completely fine with that based on, all the factors we've talked about. I'm not really racing or anything. Feel good. Just kind of wanted to see where I was at. So I go through the race, and I finish, and I'm just sitting waiting, for like the award ceremony. And I walk over at some point after I got some, some drinks and some fruit. And I looked at the board and I thought, why am I first? Like, where was that guy? And so still to this day, like, I swear, I'm trying to think, like, was he real? Did this person really go in front of me? And I guess maybe he wasn't actually in the race. He was just running. And it just coincided that, that he was running when we started this race, because it's a public park. So it's not like it was closed off for people to use. So that was pretty cool to have that. So it was just nice to have like a check and actually do very well in that instance. So I'm more of like a middle distance preference in terms of races. My favorite distance to race is 10 miles. I just really like that for whatever reason. Number one, there aren't very many of those. One of my all-time favorite races is the Broad Street Run in Philadelphia. Just a super great place to run, Philadelphia in the US. And what's cool about that race is it's pretty much, you only make 3 turns in 10 miles, and that's right in the middle of the course. It's entirely down what's called Broad Street in Philadelphia. And so you run a straight line, and it's like a slight downhill the whole race. And the only real time you turn is when you go around City Hall, which is right in the middle of Philadelphia. So you go right, left, right, and then you just go back straight down. So it's kind of a really cool race that you don't really have to worry about. Sometimes those tight turns can be a challenge in bigger runs, so you don't really have to worry about that. But yeah, I just want to see where I'm at and kind of go from there and see how it goes and see where my fitness is. I do have a 10 miler here in Pennsylvania where I live in a couple weeks, so it's just another run I like to do every year. So we'll see where I'm at on Saturday, and then kind of see how that translates in terms of that for the next race. Then those are the only two I really have scheduled at this point, though. I don't really have anything else on the calendar.
And while talking to you, you also said that you did a 12-hour ultra running 36 miles. That is incredible because you have your running streak and everything going on. So, what made you decide to take on that challenge?
Now, embarrassingly, it was all about the shirt. I really liked the hoodie. So it was our local running store here at Fleet Feet. They always put on really great events. And so it was just one of those, oh, I've never done anything like that. I wonder how that would be. And so, as you said, this was during my first run streak. So it was 2021, I want to say. I was like, well, it's a 12-hour race. So, sometimes those ultras are like, you have to really plan out like a long course. And I wasn't interested in that. This was like I think it was 3-mile loop, I want to say, something to that effect, a couple mile loop at this one community park. And so I thought, okay, well, let's give this a spin. I actually convinced my goddaughter, who was also doing a little bit of a run streak at the time, and she was a college student at the local college. I said, hey, you want to do this run with me? I wouldn't even call it a race. And she said, sure. I said, well, it's 12 hours long. And she said, okay. And so eventually she ended up joining me for it. And so her longest run before that was, I think, 8 miles, 10 miles, something to that effect. So definitely wasn't necessarily trained for running 12 hours necessarily, but we took it super easy and took lots of breaks, had lots of snacks. I think that's one of the cool vibes of ultra running is their attention to the food game is super high. So I think that definitely helped with it a lot.
That is incredible. She only ran 8 to 10 miles, but then she ended up doing 36. So, how were you able to motivate her? Because it's hard. Because I remember me when I first did my Berlin Marathon, I only did 30K a couple of times. And first time I did it when I arrived here in Berlin, and my calves were like shaking and it was quaking. So, it's really tough to motivate somebody who has not done any distance prior. So, how were you able to motivate your goddaughter doing all this time to do like 36 miles?
Yeah, I think, it was really important to break it down into more realistic chunks. There was a lot of walking, which was completely fine. We would break the course down, so the course itself had some parts that were more of an uphill. So we're like, okay, well, we're never going to run that. We'll walk that portion. We'll run, that little portion there, and we'll come there. And we alternated, and I think that made it a lot more manageable. It helped that it was like a small crushed stone type of surface, so a little more forgiving, I think, than if you were doing it on like a paved path for that long. I don't know. I feel like that might not be quite as enjoyable to do. Then we would just say, okay, well, let's see. I think we did 2 loops out, and then we would take a break for a couple minutes, get something to drink, something to eat, just to try to maintain the calories side of things, because I think that's where you can potentially have some issues in the world of endurance running, is if you're under fueling and overexerting. Definitely not a good combination. That was really helpful, I think, to keeping us motivated. And I think all told, we did 36 and a half miles in about 6 hours 37 minutes, according to Garmin. I just went back and checked the record, so I think that's pretty decent. So we didn't run the full 12 hours, which is fine. Maybe down the road, another goal for myself would be, okay, well, would you go to 50 miles? Could you do more than that? 100K? I don't know. Just be something to check out.
That is a good time for 36 miles, like 6 hours. It's a good, considering you guys only did 2 miles loop and then take a rest and eat. So that's like incredible time. Like it's fast. It's not easy. Like if you have not done ultras and like in this kind of events. So what was your biggest mental and physical challenge during the ultras, and how were you able to overcome it?
So I'm definitely a subscriber to like the power of mental strength. So for me, that was, I think, keeping her in a positive mindset was really important, because I feel like that you can easily quickly go in a downward spiral if you're not able to maintain that. So that was a big part. If she needed a little more time to rest, then certainly we would take that. But I think staying upright, I know for me, whether it's stopping for a walk or standing, that'll quickly spiral. So I try to just keep moving, even if it's slower in that setting. I think that's really important. So it was, I think, a unique experience for sure to do that. And I would say physically, just the overall the fatigue that you accumulate over time. I'm sure if I look at the mile splits, they progressively got slower over time, and that makes complete sense, I think, to those of us that do that in terms of what kind of pace you were doing. And it looks like it was a mile and a half loop. Just pull it up. So yeah, it was definitely some slow ones, and that's, I think, overall it made sense when you're looking at the big picture of what was done that day.
Yeah, man, it's tough. I think doing ultra is tough. I also wanted to get into it, but it just not been able to convince myself to do it because it's a lot of lot of running. It takes a lot of different kind of mental strength and also physical strength, and which I think I'm not. I feel like my legs are not super strong to handle that, so I probably need to work on it before I do any kind of thing. Before we go to the future running things and stuff, like we already know you use Garmin, but what kind of running shoes do you wear? I think people might be interested because you do a running streak, and do you also have like a lot of shoes?
Oh my gosh, I have definitely a running shoe problem, and I'm kind of blessed with what I call a Goldilocks foot, so I can wear pretty much anything, and I think that's kind of a problem in that I want to wear everything. So any given point in time, I'll probably rotate, and for me, rotate is like I'll say within a 1 month period. um, I'll probably rotate at least 7 different pairs of shoes. So
Dang.
yeah, right now I really, for like my easier runs, I use the Nike Infinity runs. I really like them. They're soft, but if I need to do something faster, I think they're fairly responsive. Those are super great shoes. I also have the Brooks Ghost Gore-Tex. So winter running is wet, so I don't necessarily love that. So I usually leave those in my office just because no matter the weather, they're just like a good shoe that I could throw on and run in pretty much anything. So like those. But I also have the Nike Trail Pegasus Gore-Tex. So that's another shoe that I really like for like sloppier weather, but also for trail. They have a little bit better grip on the bottom. So those are often in my rotation as well, even if I'm not running on a trail. It's just something that I do tend to have as well. I also, like, for racing, I'm currently using the Saucony Endorphin Pros. I think they're the Endorphin Pro 3s. I know newer ones came out, but I haven't been racing, so I think they only have like maybe 30 miles on them. So I like those a lot. I'll probably use those for the race here on Saturday. So they're definitely another one. Another shoe that I like for speed workouts, potentially for racing, is the New Balance Super Comps. I've used those decent amount of time, so those are definitely another favorite pair of shoes for me. I also have the Brooks Hyperion Max that I like. I'll rotate those in. They're nice for some speedier workouts as well, not necessarily needing a plate or anything like a carbon sole or anything like that, but they just feel good. I have a pair of Ultras, the Riveras, that I like. They're nice just to give like a completely different feel. I don't wear them super often, but I do really enjoy them as well. And then I just retired a pair of Hoka Cliftons I was using as well. I just went through. I had like a little spring purging. So my local Fleet Feet, they collect shoes. So I always like to they give them to disadvantaged youth. So I like to clean out, like, that's a good reason to clean out your closet, I think, and get those to other people. So those are probably my highlights. There are definitely more shoes that I have and that I wear, but I think those are the ones that I tend to wear the most often, if I were to narrow it down to just a few.
That's a good reason to clear out the shoes and then reason to buy new ones too. So that works out in both ways. I also like Endorphins Pro. There is a shortage in here in Germany because you cannot get shoes at cheaper prices. So I had to ask my cousin to bring it from USA when they were here. I also wore that for my Berlin Marathon. I really like that shoes for race space because it's super light and I think you can move really quickly on those.
The Nike Vaporfly is another shoe I'd add as well. That I like that one. I think I just retired that one as well, but that was a good shoe.
Yeah, everybody uses that, right? Because that's one of the famous shoes for the racing. So it's very expensive too. Both endorphins too. It's like 230, 50 euros. Yeah, so both are like expensive shoes. It's like, do I have to sell my kidneys for it? It's so expensive. And like while we're having this conversation, one of the questions I have in my mind and I'm really intrigued and interested is, do you do any strength training or stuff on your legs? Because you we have not talked on that topic, so I was really curious on how do you do it, because you've been running for so long and 650 days right now, and you probably gonna break that 743. So do you have anything?
Oh man, so you're gonna out me here. I'm the laziest runner ever. The only strength training that I do is throwing my 3-year-old around. I don't do any gym work, and I'm also like completely honest that I'm the worst example of anything that people like should ever try to aspire to be. Beyond not doing any sort of strength training, I don't stretch, so that's a big no for me. I don't warm unless the Garmin workout has like a warm up and cool down built into the whatever workout I'm doing. I don't warm up or cool down. So on Saturday I will maybe I'll jog to the starting line if it's like I think it's fairly close to the hotel I'm staying at. So that'll be my warm up. But like I don't have like an exotic warm up routine or anything. When I finish, I will finish. I'll go and do the rest of my day with the family. Notoriously bad also at hydration and like nutrition. So I did the Philadelphia Marathon in 2023, I think it was. That's not right. And the week, I think it was like 2 weeks before, I thought, I wonder if I should like figure out like any sort of like nutrition for this. Like, should I pack gels? And I was kind of leaning towards not, but friends convinced me to do that. So my general rule is if it's like an hour and a half or less, I'm probably not going to carry like water or anything like that. Like I don't know. That's just not something I ever think about. I actually have put thought into maybe I should bring a couple gels to this race on Saturday. So I think I might do that, but we'll see. So you opened up a Pandora's box in asking that question. There we go.
Yeah, I think the next question is also towards that. So you have this incredible two streak, right? So one is going on, and then the one you stop because of the fatigue thing that you mentioned. In between these things, have you ever been injured? I'm just curious, like, what is your process of recovery and things like that, or have you ever had issues or injuries or any kind of things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So during the first streak, uh, I rolled my ankle, so I didn't break it or anything, but it was moderately bad enough that I actually went to a doctor, like the orthopedic doctor here, to check out, and the doctor said, "Well, I don't recommend you do anything for the next 2 weeks." I said, "Well, I run every day. Like, how's that? How's that going to work?" And he's like, "Well, I wouldn't recommend it." I said, "But you're not saying I can't do it, right?" So I think that probably cycles back to my mental maybe instability or orientation. So fortunately, I've been kind of blessed. I think with like good health. Certainly we all have those nagging issues from time to time. I have like an Achilles issue that flares up from time to time. So one of the reasons I rotate through the different shoes with different drops and stuff is I find it helps me. I don't, again, this is not a scientific or medical thing for me, but I think having different drops and things helps like stretch your ankle, and so for me it makes it feel better. I think that's it. I've had some illness, like minor illnesses, nothing serious, and I was able to push through. And those were like, admittedly, I would run a mile, nothing vigorous. I've been healthy enough, I think, to maintain each of those streaks, probably through stupidity and sheer will in some of those instances, but we got it done.
I think that's a typical response from a runner, that you go to a doctor and the doctor like, I recommend do not run it. Like, what do you mean I can do, right? So I think that's what all of us would probably do if we had a running streak at that point. So yeah, I don't blame you. So you said that 743 is the longest streak you have ever done. Like you said earlier that you are going to go for it and break that. And also you also spoke about maybe doing a different kind of ultras with different mileage and stuff like that. Are you thinking about these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, so right now my goal is to get to June 2nd, I guess, and then that'll be the new longest streak to build upon. Kind of hard to believe. I'm not really one that honestly like closely monitors it. I really honestly do take a one day at a time approach. Like, okay, I'm gonna get my streak done, and the only time honestly that I Like, I know the day I started my streak, but I never really know how many days it is. I only know when someone either asks or makes a reference, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how many days it is now. Like, so, we were chatting about my run streak, so I looked up how many days was, June 1st, 2023, and that's, I found out it was apparently today's day 650. So I think that's just something that is built into, my daily routine for me. At least at this point, I don't want that to not be part of my routine. Certainly, people fall out of love with running, and so I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Or you get an injury, surgery, something where it's not possible. So I think that's goal one at this point. In terms of maybe other races, I'd love to qualify for the Boston Marathon. When I did the Philly Marathon in 2023, I was 6 or 7 minutes short of the qualifying time, and that was before this, like the slider they do makes me feel slightly better. But I think ultimately qualifying for that is a goal I'd like to achieve. But that also requires like realistic training. So like with the other life obligations, I don't know if I'm really at the capacity to do that and do it how I would want to do it. So I think down the road a little bit, that would be something to strive for, though, for sure. But not one requiring something like that. I think, I don't know, those are probably the ones I'm looking at. Maybe another, destination race that might not require a qualifying time would be fun to do. But I don't know what that is at this point.
And also, I know you said you don't do a lot of race, but has there been any race that you went to and you were like, wow, this is amazing, and the crowds were fantastic, the events, everything leading up to it and everything? Has there been any kind of event that you have like loved when you did the races, stuff like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I used to run more races, but I would say for me that any race in Philadelphia is well worth it. For those that are not in the U.S., Philadelphia isn't always known as the most warm place, even though it's called the city of brotherly love. In sports world, some people like to give Philly a hard time, but I can tell you that anytime I've run either like the Broad Street Run or the Philadelphia Marathon, crowds are always incredible. I don't know if anyone's an Apple Watch user. Sometimes in races, I'll wear my Garmin for tracking, but I'll bring my Apple Watch with me just because it's a little bit easier to control your music. And one of the features that happens on an Apple Watch is like if you're you can enable it anyway. If you're in a loud environment, so thinking like concerts and things, it'll say, hey, you're at a loud place, and for so long, exposure can be bad for your hearing. The number of times I would get that alert on a race outdoors is like just it happens every time I run Philly. So I got to say that's definitely, I think, something to strive for if you're running and you want a place that supports you. I think that's it. And I'm sure other of the major marathons or major races will hopefully be a similar environment, but I can at least speak to the power of the Philadelphia crowds for sure. I think that's definitely something that people should try to experience. And I also think Philadelphia is a great place to visit as well. I'm biased living in the state, but it's for those that have not, that are not, or that are in the U.S. and haven't come to Philadelphia, there's a lot of history, a lot of art museums, great parks. So I think Philly would be a great place to visit.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it. That's also BQ too, right? You can qualify for the Boston from the Philadelphia. Yeah, I've heard great things about it. That's also BQ too, right? Because you can qualify for the Boston from the
Yeah, you
Philadelphia.
can.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've heard good
You run
things
faster
about
than
it.
me.
But I don't think that's going to happen. But I think you're fast. So what was your time for when you did the Philly? When you
When
finished
I
the
did Philly, I
marathon?
finished in 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Yeah, that's a dream. I
And
have
that
a
was, I'll
dream.
tell you, that that was an honest, kind of sidetrack here. But that was like a complete surprise too. In that, so I've only done two marathons. My first marathon, I finished in 4 hours 54 minutes and whatever many seconds. So and I did it when I in 2013. So when I turned 30, I said, oh, I'm going to do a marathon. And then I didn't do another marathon. I did the ultra in 2021, but then, so I guess that's technically a marathon. But then I didn't really do another marathon until 2023. So I had no real expectation of what to expect. Nothing really. I obviously knew my fitness level from 2013 to 2023 was better. I also did a good job like with the training plan and everything, sticking to that. But what was really cool, because we were talking about the Garmin watch, was watching like the race finish time predictor change. So when I signed up for the 2023 marathon, the people would say, "Oh, what's your goal?" I'm like, "I don't really know. I finished faster than the last one," which was, definitely something to strive for. And then my goal continued to change a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, 4 hours, like that's still an hour, like almost an hour faster. That'd be great. Like if I could do that. And then like it just kept kind of like getting lower and lower in the time, to the point like I told some friends by the end of training, like, well, if I get to like sub 320, I think that would be incredible. And like that's like I'd be super stoked with that. I said, but 330 is like where I'd be like more than pleased with that as well. And then my watch said like three. I think the lowest I saw was like 315. I want to say. So I'm like, okay, well, like I'm not like that'll just be like an A+ goal. If I get there, like that's awesome. And the race came and everything went like super better than expected. Like the weather was perfect. It was like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. I'm sorry. For me, like that's like a dream weather right there. Not no wind or anything like that. So it was just like nice, cooler temperatures. Yeah, it just went super well.
That's cold, man. 45 is 7 degrees, 7 degrees Celsius. It's
Okay.
cold.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also used to do Fahrenheit when I was living in the US. I was there for like 12, 15 years. And then I moved here like in 2023. So now I'm used to Celsius because everybody uses Celsius here. So,
Yeah, I know.
but
Us weird
that's,
Americans.
yeah. No, I think it's different system. And also that's like incredible. Like when you did like a 12, 2013, 4 hours and 50, and then in 10 years it's like 313 is like incredible growth. And in terms of running the way you are running, then I think that's like really progress. That's like I'm jealous. That's all I can say.
No, don't be jealous. Be do better. You've got
Uh,
the ability.
I don't know, man. You seems like you don't strength train and then you don't do stretching, and I think you're natural. I think that's the proper right word to say. You seem to have like a natural ability to run and then be progressively faster and get like this. Because I did sports when I was growing up. I was kind of a chubby. I was like a obese, like big fat person. So I used to play sports when I was a kid, but I was never like a athlete to do. But I started playing ultimate frisbee, and then I started like loving to run and stuff like that. But I think some are just naturally, like you cannot beat that. And just like my brother, he trained for Berlin Marathon for 3 months, and he did like sub 4. And I've been training for a whole year, and then I was like, oh my god, it's like, oh. I think some people are just natural, and I think we are one of them who just have this. It's nice.
Thank you.
And also you work hard too, so I'm not just saying that you're nothing, but I think it seems that you're on 650 days already, and that just shows your mindset. And also you need to have like a strong character for that too, because running is hard, and to run for like continuous for 650 days is tough, because we, like you said, we have different situations and everything. So kudos to you, man. Like you're doing great. Yeah. So the other question would be, you have done 2 marathons, like one ultras, but let's say if you have option to do one race, that okay, Bobby, this is just pick one race anywhere in the world, or like just a challenge, like what would you pick? Like, is there anything that you have in your mind on a bucket list that okay, maybe I want to do this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Berlin seems cool. London seems great. I don't know. I would love to go somewhere else. I just don't know where that would be. Certainly, at some point it would be cool to do the World Marathon Majors. So
Mhm.
I got to be able to qualify for them first. I was rejected as is the normal course of action for the New York Marathon. I think that would be great to do as well. So I think one of those definitely would be high on my list. I had a friend who did Tokyo. She said it was incredible. So definitely would love that as well. And even Big Sur in California looks beautiful.
That's a
Yeah.
tough one. I know.
Yeah.
I've driven to that Big Sur, and it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's super hilly. It's like incredible.
Yeah. I was gonna say I've heard Honolulu is really pretty too. So
In Hawaii,
yeah,
I was gonna say I think you will BQ Berlin Marathon. I
I
think
think I'll
it's
get there
much more.
eventually.
Yeah, I think it's much more flatter than Philly. I think it's one of the flattest marathon out there. Berlin. So and it's nice too. I've done it twice
That's
now. So yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. If you definitely come here, then yeah, we should run together. There is last just one final question left for today. Like you have this incredible streak, like 2 times you have done. Let's say there is a new runner out there. We all have different issues with balancing life and then work and then training and everything. So since you do so much thing from your running streak to your PhD and then the kids, I know it is very difficult with kids, like to manage everything. So what would be that one piece of advice I would give?
I mean, I think first is like be gracious to yourself. It's easy to get overwhelmed with all of the stuff, all of the things, all of the obligations and responsibilities and life. And as you said, and as a phrase I like to use as well, Rome wasn't built in a day. Take it easy. Be realistic. Also, be strategic. If you have at least if you can at least find the pattern of your schedule, then you can better know like, okay, normally I can fit whatever it is. If it 10 minutes is great. 10 more minutes than you were doing previously. Find that little window and try to build it into what you're doing. And I think what I've found through the streak, at least for myself, is over time it becomes a lot easier to do that repetition, to keep it, to maintain it, versus trying, like, starting is hard no matter what it is. School, new job, family. Early part is the hard part. Once you get into a rhythm, I think you'll find that it's a lot easier to do. And find supportive people. I'm blessed with a family that is super supportive of me, and so being able to do this is by them helping and making sure that it's part of what I need to accomplish for a day. And I think over time you'll find that you're going to get a lot more out of it than you're putting into it. And so I think that it'll be something that pulls you into continue to do. So if you're in a place, if you're in a town or a city that has like a run club and you want to do this, I think that's a great start. Having that social aspect is super helpful for some people. Makes it less scary. It's nice to know that you're not going to be running alone necessarily. So I would highly recommend that if you can, or even if it's just a friend. It doesn't have to be a formal thing. If you have a friend who's maybe considering it as well, it's a lot harder to not show up for your friend than it is to say, oh, well, I just don't want to today. So just building in those ways to make yourself accountable, I think, could be really helpful in the long run.
That's a great advice. Yeah, thank you for that. And I have final one question. I just remember that. I know, like we as a dad, some of us really struggle to prioritize running and everything like that. So, what would you recommend, or what advice that we give to like so many dads out there that wanted to run and do things like that, but they are overwhelmed with life and everything?
Yeah, so for me, I really view running as like telescope into the future. I know that by doing this now, by running now, by maintaining my health now, whether that's physical or mental health, is currency I'm putting in a bank for, like, when I get older and my kids are older and they hope, if they have children, I can be an active grandparent and help them whatever they want to as the next phase of my life. Or even if it's my wife and I just going on vacations or adventures, like being able to do that from a health and wellness perspective. I think it's really important for you to be willing to invest in yourself a little bit. I think over time the multiplication of that will be more beneficial to you. So I think it's important for you to prioritize yourself a little bit as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to thank you for taking your time and coming to the show and sharing your incredible journey. You have so many stuff going on in your life, and then you still somehow manage to show up and do everything. So I think a lot of us can take some inspiration from you how to balance everything out. So yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your story.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about running. It's been great. It's great talking to you. Thanks for doing the show.
Thank you for watching this episode of the United Happy Hour podcast. We really appreciate you tuning in until the end. See you again soon in the next episode. Until then, bye bye.